Hello everyone, welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. Today we're talking about low carb diets, what makes some low carb diets work and why others fail. And I'm going to, at the end of this video, tell you exactly what you need to do to be successful on this kind of diet, because it's not just understanding what to do, it's understanding why you're doing what you're doing that's going to help you to be able to be a success when you're trying to lose weight. I'm talking to you today about diet because it's a topic that comes up often in my office. So what makes a low carb diet successful for some and not successful for others? And I think the most important thing to keep in mind is what, first of all, is a low carb diet. So when we're talking about low carb, in the traditional sense of the word, it's eating anything less than 125-ish carbohydrates per day, which in the grand scheme of things is the kind of diet that you're still eating quite a bit of carbs. So the first thing I'm going to say about why some low carb diets don't work is because 125 grams of carbs for some people is still enough carbohydrates to cause your insulin levels to rise significantly, leading you to store fat. So let's back up. What's insulin? So number one reason that I think that most people have difficulty losing weight when they're trying to lose weight is that they don't understand what elements come into play when you're trying to lose weight. Insulin is a huge factor in weight loss because insulin is the hormone that causes you to store energy that you intake. So if I eat an energy source, which would be carbohydrates or fats. Those are the two energy sources that we eat. If I eat any of those two energy sources and my insulin level is high, I will store the energy that I'm eating. What causes us to have high insulin levels? Well, what causes us to have high insulin levels is the amount of carbohydrates that we eat. Everything we eat will raise our insulin levels. However, when you eat carbohydrates, your insulin levels rise much more significantly than if you eat proteins or fats, which are the three main sources of foods that we're able to eat: carbs, proteins, fats. So that's the first thing that I want to put out there to you as an idea. Whenever you eat, you're eating carbs, proteins, or fats. When you eat carbs, they will raise your insulin levels significantly. And so we need to be careful how many carbs we're intaking. That's the first thing that we need to understand about carbohydrates. Part of the reason that low carbohydrate diets tend to help people to lose weight. Okay, that's part one. So I just mentioned that 125 grams is considered a low carbohydrate diet. However, if you really want to lose weight, then rather than just doing low carb, I would suggest that you do really low carb, something towards the level of a ketogenic diet, so that you would go down to 50 total grams of carbs or less per day. Now we're talking about doing nutritional ketosis here. The reason that that would be helpful is that when we do 50 total carbs per day, we will very likely keep our insulin levels in check. That's the most important thing. Again, remember, when your insulin levels get past a certain point, all they're doing now at that point is storing carbohydrates into fats, and they're storing fats into fats. That's what they do. Now, it's important for us to understand something else. It's normal for your insulin to work to get the sugar out of your system, because it's important for us to have a teaspoon or less of sugar circulating in our system to be healthy. Right? More than that is dangerous for our system. So insulin's doing its job. When it says, oh, there's too much sugar in the system, I'm going to take it and store it as fat, because storing it as fat is safer for us than having it floating around as sugar. So that's one thing. And carbohydrates, sugar, you're going to notice I'm using those two words interchangeably because for our body, they're interchangeable ideas. Carbohydrates, sugars, it's the same thing. A carbohydrate basically is a chain of sugars strung together. So keeping our carbs at 50 grams or less is going to be healthy because it's going to keep our insulin levels low. Now, the other hormone that we need to know about is glucagon. Glucagon is a hormone that causes your body to use stored energy. So it will go into the fat stores and pull the fat out, and it will tell your liver to produce any glucose that it might need. So if I don't ingest any carbs at this meal, so that would leave me with protein and fat. If I don't ingest any carbs at this meal, let's just say, for example, as I go through my day, my body would still be able to use energy because it would take from the fat stores. And if I needed some sugar, my body could have my liver produce a little bit of sugar for me to use. So there's two things we're keeping track of at this point. We're saying that insulin staying low is good for me because it keeps my body from storing energy. And then we're also recognizing that when insulin is low, glucagon will rise because it's going to allow my body to use the energy that's within it. So a low carb diet then allows our body to use the fat stores that we have. Now, what's interesting though, and this is something that we need to be careful about, what's the possibility that I'm going to be able to eat low carb without changing the amount of the other two macronutrients that I'm eating? So if I'm eating low carb, which means that I'm no longer, okay, let's define a carb right now. I'm no longer eating bread. I'm no longer eating rice. I'm no longer eating pasta. I'm no longer eating grains of any kind, actually. I'm not eating cookies and chips. And so I'm keeping all my carbohydrates low because 20 grams of carbs, 50 grams of carbs, that's not a very large number. If I'm doing 50 total grams of carbs, like a slice of bread has 15 grams of carbs in it. So 2 slices of bread, I'm already at 30 grams of carbs. You see what's happening there? Like the smallest meal that I'm going to make at the beginning of my day, let's say I'm making a breakfast, I'm almost using up all my carbs. So if we want to be efficient in the way that we are managing the carbohydrates that we have in our life, then using all of our carbs on a potato, because a small potato is going to be 50 grams of carbs, or a little bit of rice, or it's not an efficient way to use my carbohydrates. So what ends up happening is that to keep my carbs really low, I usually end up having to eliminate, pasta, bread, rice, all the grains. I have to eliminate all those foods that are very high in carbs. So what am I replacing it with? I'm replacing it with leafy green vegetables. I'm replacing it with cruciferous vegetables. Those would be broccoli, cauliflower, so those kind of things. I'm replacing it with salad, lettuce. So I'm using my leafy greens as my carbohydrate source. And depending on which doctor you listen to, because some doctors say don't even count those carbs, other doctors say that they count. But regardless, how much of that would I need to eat to be equivalent to 2 slices of bread? Well, actually, the number's quite high. You can eat quite a bit of vegetables, quite a bit of salad, quite a bit before you get to the number of carbs in the 2 slices of bread. So here's the thing though, because you can eat so much of that, it's somewhat filling, but at the same time, you're not going to eat enough of that to replace all the carbs that you would have eaten to fuel your day. So then where's my fuel source actually coming from? It's coming from the fat in the diet. Low carb diets that work when you increase the fats that you're eating. So what's happening is low carb, low fat doesn't work. And we've seen that model fail over and over and over and over again, and there's a very simple reason that it fails. When you eat a diet that's low in fat and low in carbs, you're not actually giving your body a fuel source to begin with. So every day I'm not giving my body a fuel source. My body's going to behave hungrily. Now, what's interesting here is that if I bring my carbs down very low, eventually, of course, I'm going to use body fat on me. It has to happen. But what's happening is everything's going down. So my body energy will lower to match the intake of food that I'm allowing to come in. And because I'm still eating carbs, remember, most low carb diets are telling you 125. So even if I lower my carb intake to 125 to 100 even, it's still well above 50. So my body's still getting enough carbs that my insulin is being spiked. And when your insulin is spiked and it's storing fat, so it will continue to store some. But the other thing it does is it causes you to be hungry. When insulin is high, your hunger hormones are still being activated. So you're going to look for food. So it's a very interesting thing that, and the other thing that's going to happen is that when insulin is also high, that means you're still stimulating the parts of your brain that react to sugar because, of course, your carbs are still coming in. So that pleasure sensor is still going off that says, oh, there was sugar in the system, yay. And so that also causes us to feel hungry. If you want to feel satiated, then your body needs to believe and understand that there's enough energy there because there needs to be enough energy there. One of the things that you want to try to accomplish is to take your carbs down, bring your fats up, because these are two carbohydrates and fats. Those are the two energy sources. So if I lower one, I automatically raise the other to keep a kind of balance happening. So guess what ends up happening? When I lower my carbs, but I increase my fats, the total energy that my body is ingesting, it remains the same. But my body gets used to running on fats, which means that my insulin level gets to come down. Well, my insulin level comes down, what happens? My glucagon goes up. So now my glucagon is going into the fat stores and it's pulling out energy for me to use. It's also using the energy that's coming in from the fats that I'm eating. And so what eventually happens, and this is the beautiful part of the story, is that when I become fat adapted, so a week or two later, when my body is absolutely recognizing that, oh wait, the sugar is not coming back, keep using the fats, then what happens is that my body starts to say, okay, I'm pulling from the fat storage. I've kept my energy levels even because I never had a decrease in the amount of energy that was coming into my body, right? Carbs went down, fats went up. What's interesting is that eventually what starts to happen is that as I'm eating my foods now, so I'm eating my vegetables, I'm eating my protein with the fat that comes with it. So that means if I'm eating a steak, I'm allowing myself to eat the fat that comes with the steak. If I'm eating a piece of pork, I'm allowing myself to eat the fat that came with the pork. If I'm eating eggs, I'm eating the whole egg. I'm eating healthy fats, so I'm eating nuts that have healthy fats like walnuts, pecans. I'm eating oils, healthy oils like olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. I'm eating avocados. I'm eating things that have healthy fats. But eventually what's going to happen is that because my body starts to utilize its own fat, those fats get balanced out as well. What you start to notice is that because I'm eating in a way that turns on this other pathway, and because my body has access to my stored fat, eventually I can eat a little bit less fat and still feel satiated because my body will make up the difference, right? If I eat 100 calories, yes, less fat today, my body will just pull 100 calories from my fat storage. Now, why that's pretty cool is because we don't even notice that we start doing that. Most people who make this transition just naturally eat a little bit less fat over time because just eating their normal and eating normally until they feel satiated, they start to feel satiated sooner and sooner because they're eating highly nutrient-dense vegetables, which giving them the micronutrients that they need, and then they're eating good quality proteins and good quality fats that's helping them to feel satiated and helping them to have building blocks for their body. And in that process, the need for fats goes down because, again, the body can pull from the fats on us. So low carb works best when it's low carb, high fat. It works even better if it's keto numbers, so 50 grams or less carbs, moderate protein, high fat. And high fat is an interesting word to use there because, like I said, eventually it's actually moderate because you make up the excess from yourself. Now, of course, over time, when you get to your ideal weight, your need to intake fat resumes because your body is not going to take until you disappear. So eventually you will start to even out and the amount of fat you consume will go back up. But here's the interesting thing. It goes back up to allow homeostasis, right? It goes back up to allow you to be even. And so the great part about that is you still maintain a great weight. So a few things I want us to understand when we do low carb, high fat, because it's really, really important for us to recognize that if we start off doing low carb, high fat, so we take our carbs down, we bring our fats up, and then we don't keep track of our carbs and allow our carbs to creep back up, what happens? We will gain weight. If your fats are high, but your carbs are high, well, this is the standard American diet, and you will gain weight. So it's important for you to be on board with what you're doing. This is not a diet that you can do halfway. This is why low carb, in the sense of 125 grams with high fat, you really need to be in a metabolic situation that's stable for that to work for you. If you have any kind of insulin resistance, 125 grams of carbs plus high fat will very likely lead to problems, will lead to weight gain, will lead to more metabolic issues, because for the person with insulin resistance, 125 grams of carbs is too high to keep your fat high. Your insulin will be spiking all the time. You want to get those numbers down to less than 50. However, if you are in a good metabolic state, 125 can work for a lot of people and with high fat and keep you in a great place. But you need to make sure that you're paying attention to how your body is reacting. And if you're doing a 125 with high fat, and you're gaining weight or you're not losing, and you have weight to lose, if you have weight to lose, that's what I'm talking about, then you need to reassess. If you do the keto numbers, so 50 grams or less, and high fat, you will very likely lose any weight that you need to lose. You will also address your metabolic issues that you might have, because your insulin levels will come down. It's important for us to understand that our high insulin pushes people to feel hungry. It's part of the process. It's normal for people to feel hungry when their insulin levels have spiked, because it's telling your system that, we use the sugar, like the sugar got stored, the energy got stored, so we will need to replace that storage soon, right? We will need to replace what got stored. Your body needs to be able to function. So it's important for us to recognize that it's normal to feel hungry when you feel, and it's normal to eat when you feel hungry. The other thing I want you to understand, and I think it's really motivating that this happens, but at the same time it can be very confusing to people. So when you start a low carb diet, so you take your numbers down, especially if you go to keto numbers and you go down to like 50 grams or less, you are going to lose a lot of weight. It's important for us to recognize that the first weight that you lose is water weight. So when you lose, 5 pounds in the first week or whatever it is, or in the first month, you lose that 5 pounds and you're like so excited, that's water. And it's water because carbohydrates stay in our system because they're bound to water. So they make glycogen, they make glycogen, they make these compounds, but they use water to do that. So of course, we retain water when we've used a good amount of carbohydrates for fuel. So it's important for us to recognize that, yes, I'm going to lose a lot of weight in the very first week or two. What happens after that is that your weight loss is going to decrease. And you're still going to be losing, but maybe you might lose a quarter of a pound per week. Maybe you might lose even a quarter of a pound every 2 weeks. We need to recognize that that's okay. Some people are lucky and they lose a pound or two per week, and that's terrific too. But what you need to recognize is that, first of all, if you don't have a lot of weight to lose, if you're talking about 20 pounds, losing a quarter pound a week is still more weight than you were losing when you were doing the standard American or Canadian diet. So that's important to recognize. The other thing is that it's still a quarter of a pound, and over 4 weeks that's going to be a pound. So you're still losing enough weight to make what you're doing worthwhile, and you're still going to be able to get to the goal that you've set for yourself, which I hope your overall goal is better health. Now, actually, I was going to stop there, but I'm going to add another thing that I think is really important for people to recognize. Carbohydrates are very inflammatory, and as we know, inflammation causes us to retain water, and inflammation causes us to be heavier. So the more inflammation you have, actually, the more heavy you're going to be. Carbohydrates cause inflammation. And one of the reasons that carbohydrates cause inflammation is because our inflammation system, so the pathways that are used to heal, when you have a foreign pathogen in you, these inflammatory agents are released, and it causes your liver to release sugar to mobilize you to be able to fight off the pathogen. So basically, your liver is giving your body sugar because it's about to fight. And it's a short-term thing, right? It's just for that inflammation to happen and your body to kind of grab the pathogen and try to get rid of it. However, when we eat sugar, our body doesn't recognize and understand that that's not the liver inputting a signal that there's a pathogen. So we actually end up with inflammation that's with us consistently, causing us to feel not so great, right? And that leads to other negatives like brain issues, inflammation, so autoimmune issues, all kinds of things happening because of the excessive inflammation in our system. So decreasing sugar also helps us to decrease the amount of inflammation in our bodies. And I'm a perfect example of that. You know, the only reason I found the ketogenic diet was because I had a hip issue that was inflammation, and I was trying to decrease the inflammation in my body. And so I started to Google, well, how do you decrease inflammation? And I found that it was by reducing sugar. So I no longer have a hip issue. And as a matter of fact, I got rid of my knee issues and I got rid of my back issues. So all of my basically joint issues that I was having have been eliminated because I found the ketogenic diet. The reason that I'm talking to you about this is I think that the other thing we need to understand is that it's not only about weight loss, it's about the quality of life you're going to improve when some of the other metabolic things that are happening within your body because of excessive sugar are no longer happening. You are going to cure some of the physical issues that you're living as well, if you have them. Some people don't have them, and you might be lucky that the only thing you're trying to cure is a weight issue. But if you do have these other issues, then some of them will be addressed by eliminating sugar out of your diet. I really hope that this video was clear and helped you to understand how low carb works, because we take the carbs down and we bring the fats up because we need to keep the energy as even as we can. And eventually in that system, the fats will come down naturally because your body will start to use its own fats. I hope that you were able to recognize that this is a process. It takes time. We're not trying to eliminate our weight issues overnight. This is something that you're going to work on, but if I understand what I'm trying to accomplish, and I try to accomplish that every day, then I can focus my attention on eating healthy foods that are nutrient dense, so leafy greens, cruciferous, good vegetables with high quality meats, high quality fats like the fat that came with the meat, or the oils, avocado, coconut, olive, good cheeses, trying to find foods that will keep me in a ketogenic state of eating to help me to do better for my own health. It's about understanding the psychology that's going to keep you in place, right? So if I know what I'm doing, it's more likely that I'll do it. If I understand why I'm doing it, it's more likely that I'll do it. So this is why I'm explaining it to you, because I know that if you understand what you're trying to accomplish, there's a better chance that you actually accomplish it. I hope you found this video helpful. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. I can't wait to talk to you in the next video. I absolutely appreciate that you guys watched the video all the way to the end. This is a good opportunity for you to hit that subscribe button so that you'll see my upcoming videos. And I'd really love to know what you guys want to hear me talk about next. So put comments and questions and ideas for future videos in the comments section so that I can make videos that are going to be what you want to hear me talk about. If you liked my video today, please give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. I can't wait to talk to you guys again, and I will see you in the next video.